Let's get started. So, again, thanks everyone for coming in and continuing this journey all week long. I really do appreciate that. I always thank Pro Photo Daily, American Photography, Photo Shelter, Epson, and Archive Magazine for being our sponsors. So thanks you for them. Friday, we still have one more presentation, Sasha Maslov, who will be presenting on Friday. We take a break tomorrow night because I guess everyone could use that. And so today we have Serhii Korovayny. Close?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. And he's actually in a hotel in Ukraine at the moment, traveling to, he will tell us all about it. So it's all yours, my friend. Go.
Yeah, thanks, Frank, and thanks, everyone. It's still hard for me to imagine that there are people online because it's 2 a.m. now in Ukraine, in this hotel. But I guess I hope you have a nice evening. So thanks for giving me and other photographers who are covering war in Ukraine and platform for sharing our stories. So yeah, my name is Serhii Korovayny, and I'm a editorial photographer from Ukraine, and I'm covering this full-scale Russian invasion since the first days of it. I'm from to give you my short background. I'm from this contested region of Donbass, and my hometown is being occupied for 8 years. So I know that the war has been started not in February 24, but in actually 2014, not in 2022. And before the full-scale invasion, I was doing a lot of editorial photography, but I was also kind of doing commercial photography and portrait photography, some videos, some VR. So when Russia invaded, I kind of switched fully to photojournalism, and I'm happy with it. It's just not a happy cause for me to do it. So let me share this my screen, and we start with photography, right? Okay, so yeah. So this is one of the very first images I've done in this war, and I guess many of my colleagues showed, and I saw people show these pictures like this. It's subway, people taking shelter during the very first air raid alerts. So I was in Kharkiv, working as a producer for Washington Post when the war started. Kharkiv is a eastern Ukrainian city next to the Russian border, and so we were covering Donbass, we were covering eastern Ukraine, and it was an understanding that something's going to happen. But as many Ukrainians didn't believe, I guess, that it will be like this full scale aggression. It was more like, okay, it might be something happen, but it's going to be more on the east, so we're going to be fine. And it was, I guess, the first time ever I went to bed with my full clothes on after this Putin speech about his historical lectures about Ukraine is not a country actually. So, and at 5 a.m. They started to bomb Kharkiv, and immediately I woke up and I had chat with my colleagues that I probably have to leave to check with my family. So I went to Kiev, to the capital, and it's a picture in capital in Kiev. It's my subway station next to home. Alerts. There were saboteurs above us. It's the second day of war, so it was really unclear will Russians have success or not, and we believe that they probably will capture everything easily. We didn't know that it's gonna go so bad for them. So I didn't really. Again, I didn't believe that it's going to happen, but I made plans just in case. And my plans were to move my family and my friends whom I can help to the western Ukraine region, to the city of Lviv. And I did it. And next month and a half, I was living between two cities, between Lviv and Kiev, and it was my my daily routine to drive back and forth and to do photography both in Lviv, which was kind of a very important backing city for Ukraine, for connection to Europe, and people of course refugee crisis, and Lviv was a big transport hub, and Kiev, which was under attack of Russians, and so it was my routine going back and forth, and I was starting to shoot all kinds of things in Lviv. Firstly, I mean, first days, everyone were shocked, and I was also shocked. And photography actually helped me a lot to cope with this shock and find myself useful, because many of my friends and colleagues, and I mean Ukrainians in general, who didn't. Who weren't accepted in military, or who didn't have an experience, were really lost. And we want to help, we want to do something, but we can't do anything. So people trying to volunteer to help out, and like those women just making camouflage nets in Lviv. There were like a bunch of things like this. So photography really helped me to do something, to be useful, and I guess it's still helping out.
Yeah. So this, Sergey, is, I mean, this was ready to go as soon as the invasion started. The systems were already set up to start with, because last night Natalie was showed some images of women with sewing machines, and like the whole war machine was sort of ready to go. It's so interesting, these photographs.
Yeah, I mean, that's because, again, the war is limited conflict, has been going for 8 years. So we had similar experience in 2014, and when it was also a huge shock for the whole country, and people started to do things like this, but with a lower scale. And again, it was such a huge desire for people to do something. And it was like, literally, people were like, not like fighting, but they were desperately looking for opportunities to do, and they were like competition to join this military also, but volunteer group or whatever. Yeah. So, and obviously evacuation and refugee topics were big topics that day, since those are people with children with some sickness, mostly people, children with cancer, were evacuated to Poland, and a big story about railway station in Lviv, which was turned to a huge transit hub, and there were like thousands of people waiting for buses, for trains to Poland. People were sleeping there, spending their days. It was like a huge mess, and during the first even weeks, I would say, and those weird situations like this, where this beautiful old theater was turned to kind of refugee point where people could find shelter, and someone stayed there, but most of them just come from Kharkiv, from Donbass, even from Kiev region, from all over, because it was like that time it was unclear again how is this invasion gonna go for Putin. So people were escaping from all over the country to Europe, and they were staying in places like this for some time. to find further transportation. And scenes like this, I especially like this photography. It's again, first days were feeling quite dramatic for people who were living for a fight, and this the soldier was taking marriage and baptizing his kid like hours or days before join his unit based in Lviv and go mm, to to front line. So, and you may, if you saw some photography from Lviv from churches, it might be this church. It's like a church, and also base for things like this for soldiers. It's like a military church in Lviv, very, very beautiful. And also, many of my colleagues showed it, and people training to protect themselves. They were doing it weeks before the invasion, and they continued to do it when the invasion started. And this school, it's a school for civilians to protect themselves, to use AK, and also the tactic medicine, first aid. And it was created by refugee who became a character from another project. I'll show you. Refugee twice. So he moved from Donetsk in 2014 to Kiev, and from Kiev to Lviv, and established a school where people could teach how to protect themselves. I'll go back to this refugee project later. Oh no, it's actually here. Yeah. So I was doing mostly like documentary editorial job, but I mean, I like portrait photography, and I like to do portrait projects. So I was looking for some approach to what's happening, how to show the situation in Ukraine. I mean, creatively, and to do it as a project. So I came up with this idea to do a story about people like those you see on pictures, like myself. So people who lost their home twice because of Russia, because I mean the one country made those people to leave their places twice, in 2014 from Donbass and from Crimea, and in 2022 from their new homes. So I found those people in mostly in Western Ukraine, and some were in Lviv, some were in region. So I traveled and talked to them, made interviews, and I was interested in, is it easier or harder to be a twice refugee? Do they have skills to pack, to leave home? Do they have skills to cope with situation psychologically, or it's harder because it's like many of them said, like when they left Donbass and Crimea, they had their new home and they built it carefully with love because they knew the value of it. So when they had to lose it again, it was more painful. So that was my question. I mean, how was it? Is it difference? And it's both. It's easier because they were not shocked, because they knew that it's going to happen. They were anticipated it. Like the guy on the right center, this bald guy, Serhii, he had no single day he believed Russia will not attack, and he didn't buy like apartment. He didn't want to buy any property, basically to invest in anything, because he didn't feel safe. And I mean, like in 2021, 2020, people were just like saying to people like him, like, you're insane, you stop doing it. I mean, just start to leave. And unfortunately for everyone, he was right. Yeah. So I was documenting people like this, and it's technically, I wanted to use speedlight in each of those pictures to make them look similarly. I mean, to have the look, the view, and I wanted to do environmental portrait to show. I mean, sometimes it's suitcases or temporary beds, sleeping bags. So to show the reality they live in. Of course, it's not like harsh reality. They mostly have their place to be. Some of them actually probably returned to their places in Kiev or went further to Europe, but at some point they were refugees twice. Yeah. So and then those were pictures from Lviv, and now it's Kiev. And Kiev was different in the February, March, because Russians were staying like 20 kilometers from city center, and there were constant shellings and sound of battles, and it was like I didn't remember any day there were not news about okay, today Russia gonna do their final attempt and like ruin Kiev and reach city center. So today is the day. So it's really really scary, and I wanted to document partially. I mean, obviously, like military stuff, and it was hard time to do logistically to find contacts, but also civilians who were staying in the city and didn't want to leave. Like Katerina, she's like a regular Ukrainian young woman. And she's one of very few people left in this huge apartment blocks, which are usually bastion of life and like having hundreds of people in. And now it's again such a contrast between like life and no life, life and death. With her on this balcony, I really like this picture somehow. And obviously reporting from shelling, and Kyiv was lucky enough not to be shelled as bad as Kharkiv or Mariupol or Irpin, but we still had some rocket strikes and missile strikes, and I was looking for stories. I mean, I like pets, and I was looking for stories about people caring about taking care of their pets, because for me it was such a huge contrast between like Russians who left their bodies of their comrades on the battlefield and like Ukrainians who taking like evacuating shelters like this lady. It's not even her dogs, but she was risking like probably not risking her life, but I mean, at some extent, yes, while grabbing those dogs before evacuating them. So it was important for me to show this human side of people of Kiev, of people of Ukraine.
Sergey,
yeah, go ahead.
a question for you. How does it feel to use the word refugee for your own countrymen?
Very bad. So I made the distinction between refugee and IDP, internally displaced persons. So mostly for people like all spoilers. Sorry, those are IDPs, so they're like not refugees, but it's terminology. In terms of like mentally, I don't know. It's so that time in March, there were lots of things going on, and I didn't really have time to reflect, to sit down and think about it, to slow down. I was just like shooting, reading news, and analyzing stuff, traveling back and forth, trying to get some bulletproof vests from Poland and send them to Kiev and whatever. And I didn't notice that all those horrible things, like every 4 Ukraine and each one of 4 Ukrainians became a refugee or IDP, or like hundreds of civilians died, or it just became a reality. And you ask me this question, and I'm like, how I feel, I don't know. It's reality now. So I didn't reflect it then when it's happening, and now it's just a situation we're living in for 3 years, not 3 years, 8 years, but this extent 3 months. It's not normal, definitely, and I'm feeling so sorry for each of those people, and some of them are my friends, and like people like this. But I think the understanding of the whole tragedy gonna reach us one day later. I mean, something like this. Yeah. So again, this contrast of life and death, and this one also, I like this picture a lot, so it's a house of my friend in Kiev, and it was bombed on February 25. It was the first house attacked in Kiev. my friend says I'm I'm really lucky, so it's like I'm the first one, and they got really lucky because they were inside, but it was another entrance, so not this one on the picture, but one towards the left. So they had the windows broken, but I mean they're okay. And I was shooting him and the building, and I saw those guys, and it was such a miracle, to see this kids playing chess in front of ruined house. So I immediately approached to them and can I take a picture of you? And say, yes, of course. But what's interesting here? It's like, come on, it's so people living in these conditions again get used to it very quickly. So they didn't really understand why do I like go around them with camera and bulletproof vest, and like they just playing chess. Yeah. And situations like this, covering monuments, it's a very early stage now. It's just like you can't see those monuments, those people. They are fully covered by sandbags, and also volunteers doing all kind of stuff in Kiev, like those guys making stands for machine guns for civil cars, and all kind of things. And also another portrait project, smaller one, no speedlight because I had to do it on the go. But I like it because so it was a huge movement of people joining, we call it territorial defense units or civil defense, to protect their own neighborhoods or their own cities. And some of them joined a territorial defense on a professional base. So they signed contract, and now they're part of the Ukraine military. So part of them are fighting on the east or on Donbass, but part of them, like those guys, they would just it's a suburb of Kiev, south towards Irpin, so they weren't really real budget, but they were preparing checkpoints and positions. And I love it so much to see that they're just regular men and women with regular clothes. They're clearly not professional fighters with those guns. And I saw them all over the country, and I just loved how do they, get together and do this aesthetically. Their outfit, the way they did checkpoints. I couldn't really photograph the checkpoints, but there are some like funny signs like Putin go to hell, Putin graves, or some installations. So it was really a way of. I mean, it was art, and it still is, I guess. Or myself or some of my colleagues gonna do a nice series of checkpoints and temporary like roadblocks, and how people made them being unique. So it's always a place for people to express themselves.
A question,
Yeah.
Kurt. So
Yes.
do the Ukrainians call this a conflict, invasion, or is there another name for it?
It's a war.
It's a war.
And we are arguing about how should we call it. I mean, naming is important. So I guess I've heard it's a war for independence. It's big war, national war, Russian-Ukrainian war, so all kind of things. And so it's a problem. How should we call this stage of war? Is it war, but it's a war for 8 years? But somebody claim it's a war for 303 years. I mean, since like Cossacks and Katerina the Great killing Cossacks and ruining like their cities. So it's a job for historicals, really. But it's war. It's definitely not conflict. Okay, so yeah, and obviously when Russians retreated from north, I started to document all those like enormously cruel and bad things which happened to people in occupation, like the suburb of Kiev, Borodyanka, airstrikes just left nothing out of this huge panel, like Soviet panel apartment building, and people were like sitting and waiting basically for their relatives and friends to be digged up from those destruction, because they knew that like. This lady, I think her name is Natalia. I have it in caption, but I don't remember now. She's like, yeah, I have like my nephew and someone else here, because I knew they're there, because I don't know, I haven't seen them for a while, and they were in their apartment when it struck on March 4th. So it was like really tough, and it was a really first time when it started to be hard to photograph, because there are so much sorrow and grief on those liberated territories, and destruction of Borodyanka. It's what Russians left behind. It's a headquarter in Bucha. They were based here for months. They killed confirmed 8 people, 8 civilians outside of this building. So, and it's their aesthetic. They're living like this. It's in each room. You see this image. Each room. It's not like I chose. I deliberately picked one messy one they used as a trash room. No, it's in each one. And this like horrible smell. And another big and hard topic I covered was people who stayed as a prisoners for Russians, like this guy on the left, Maxim. He was kept for more than 10 days, and he's a young guy, he's like 20, and he remembers each detail of what happened with him. Like, how did they call him? How did they beat him? How did they, at one time he said, I was sure that I'm not afraid anymore. And then they just like get me out and shot above my head. And it's unbelievable cruel thing they did with Ukrainians. Yeah, so this guy was lucky enough to survive and share his stories. And this is his mom on the right, and I mean they were crying all the time. Yeah, and things like this in the villages all over. You just get your car and go to any village that's north of Kiev, and you approach this building and you see people and you ask, "Hey, how are you?" And yeah, it's it, and they give you a tour and they tell you it's my house. It's happened like this. You just like you find so many stories like this. Unfortunately, oops, sorry. Spoilers. Yeah, but I mean, sometimes it's also like those kids with the chess. I like this picture very much. It's again life coming back, and it's a beautiful church, and this kids playing, like girls playing volleyball. Those moments of celebration of life, after those things they survived, and it was I heard it multiple times when parents sent kids or like families went from Kiev to some village because they think that they're gonna be nice and safe there and in the village. And nothing gonna happen bad with them. But if they stay in Kiev, they're gonna have problems. But it was just the opposite. And some of those girls, they are from Kiev, but they were sent to Chernihiv, to North Ukraine, to their grandparents. And it was another series they made. And, it's this understanding that you don't want to rely on text while doing photography. And I did it, and it worked out so well. So there are in each liberated mostly village, but cities also, mostly villages, you find those signs, those text. It's люди, human beings, like civilians, basically, or дети, children, human, like, and children living here, civilians and children. And this is a way civilians were trying to protect themselves from Russians. So they were thinking that if Russians see that civilians living here or kids, they will not enter. And it strikes me so hard because, so in a way, people were like had to prove that they're human beings to be safe, and it didn't work, like never. In each village, people told me they see this sign, they go because they know it's somewhere there, so they can get some food or get some information or just interrogate them of whether they help Ukrainian military or find some soldiers. So, but I was really shocked. It was everywhere. People just like were doing it everywhere without knowing that people like in next village they're doing the same. Yeah, so I did this. And also, I mean, I didn't include it much here in this presentation, but I was trying to document what's happening around me, like not a diary, but some kind of personal photography. And this is my wife. When she spent like months and a half in Lviv, and then she moved back to Kiev, and she's so happy being back home. But I was going to Irpin, and it's a suburb of Kiev, which was heavily shelled. The Russians didn't get in, but they destroyed it too badly. And I suggested her to go with me because it's. I mean, I think it's an experience we should have to see what they did with us. and she also wanted to go. She asked me a few times. So it's a cemetery for cars of civilians, mostly, which were burned by Russians when people were trying to escape, or just during the fighting. So it wasn't like each time they killed someone inside it. Those cars might just stay next to the place where rocket hit or missile hit, and they were bring to this place. And she got really emotional there. Yeah. So, and it's Kharkiv, but it's same. So Kharkiv is a huge, second largest Ukrainian city on eastern Ukraine, and we're still surprised that Russians didn't take it, because it's like only 40 kilometers from the border. And I went there firstly. Again, I met a war there on the February 24, and last month, I don't know, I think it was the beginning of May, so it was this month. I went there, and it's a huge neighborhood, Northern Saltivka, and this name of it. And just imagine, 450,000 people are living there. It's bigger than like Mariupol. It's bigger than most of the cities. So this neighborhood, it faces Russia. So they came, and they didn't enter Kharkiv, but they entered Kharkiv, but they didn't like actually gain it. They were kicked out. But they were shelled this, and they still shell this neighborhoods heavily with artillery, all kinds of artillery, while people are still living there. And I went there with a Belgium newspaper, and we were trying to find someone. Kharkiv is a Russian-speaking city, and many people were like not pro-Russian. Some were pro-Russian, and some were like, we want to be friends with Russia. And we were looking for people who change their mind. And you can't easily find those people, because they don't want to speak out now. But we found this guy, Oleg, and he said funny thing. He said, obviously I hate them. They ruined my life. It's his apartment and everything like this. But he said, before, I thought they were normal people. And before in like January, I used to watch Russian TV, because Ukrainian and American and British UK TV channels were exaggerating, escalating, making me upset. And Russian said everything's gonna be okay. It's gonna be no war, so they calmed me down. And then like Russia came, so it's interesting to listen to him. And there are lots of people like this. And as a big topic is people living underground still. So what's happening now are Ukrainians are pretty successful in pushing Russians back from Kharkiv. And so Russians have some success on Donbass, but Ukrainians have success on the north in Kharkiv. North of the battlefield, so it's east Ukraine. And anyway, in Kharkiv and in Kherson, two big cities. So we're successful here, and they're successful there. So this is one of the recently liberated villages near Kharkiv. And in Kharkiv region, occupants, Russians, weren't that cruel to some reason. I don't know. And many of people who were among Russian army were people from Donetsk and Luhansk regions, which are occupied for 8 years. So they're like Ukrainians, but pro-Russian, Russian separatists, Russian proxies, and they're more human, more kind to civilians. They hate military Ukrainians, but they're kind to civilians. And so they retreated, like Russians retreated but people are still continue living in basements because they're afraid to go up, and it's so strange and so scary also because, I mean, you are more or less safe now. You have, I mean, many of people in this basement, and they're like around, I think it used to be 130 people. Now it's around 50, and they have their houses not destroyed, but they we prefer to be underground because it's dangerous on surface. Something might some missile might come. So this
So do
guy
you think,
Timofey,
Sergey,
yeah, go
so do
ahead.
you think that's a psychological thing?
Definitely, yeah. It's this thing I mean, there is still a danger, but
Not
not
to
to
be down there
extend to leave.
24 hours.
It's psychological thing, and it's I
Wow.
mean it surprised me, yeah. And in villages, but also in the city. So this is subway in Kharkiv, and it's next to this neighborhood I told you about. But not all of those people have their apartments ruined, and all of them have some friends, even more. So now, and those people have been living in subway for 3 months. Now, city wants to start subway running, and they want those people to move out, and they suggest so you can move to like recreation base next to Kharkiv. You're going to be provided. You can move to some dormitory. We can help you to arrange things. But again, it's psychological. People say, yeah, would better stay down here.
And
And
is it like camaraderie? I mean, do they take comfort with being with more people?
yes, partially yes. Asked them. I mean, some of them are guys like our friends now, and they said we are family. I mean, 3 months in these conditions.
Yeah.
Being with people, and we came at the moment when groups of people were leaving for dormitories in Kharkiv for other regions. They were suggested to go to Poland. They were suggested that they could go to like whenever, and people were just like crying while by saying goodbye, and kids were like, gonna see each other again. So yeah, it's something which definitely changed their life.
So that'll be interesting in the years to come, those
Mm-hmm.
types of bonds, right? To study that on a variety of levels, right? That
Mm-hmm.
those bonds could be like brothers and sisters and cousins and husbands and wives, right? I mean, that's pretty intense.
Or they prefer to forget about this time, or just like, yeah, for documentary people like me, for psychologists, for anthropologists, it's this war. It just like this field of study because it's such extreme conditions. Yeah, and also acceptable. Catch train from Poland to come to. I mean, not now, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's very strange. I mean, it's still so strange to live in it. Yeah, and this is also some pictures from this neighborhood in Kharkiv, and you can see it's a smoke. So we are here, and we constantly hearing bombing and artillery strikes, like 5 kilometers. And like next day they shelled this neighborhood again. So it's not an end story for this part of for Ukraine. It's still something going on. Yeah, and towards the end, I gonna share some recent pictures I've done in Kiev, just a few, and it's also different being in the capital now because I used to be in Kiev when it's a constant threat of attacks and like a few people, and you know empty roads. I know a few coffee shops which are working, and I go there and I meet same people like journalists, military guys, and it's also kind of sense of we're here, we are working. It's kind of camaraderie in a way, and now lots of people coming back. And last week I was shooting in Kiev mostly, so it's funerals of soldiers and one by one, and it's all over the country, but obviously in Kiev also. And I mean, street life like this. So we have a big explosion, and not explosion, exhibition. Sorry, exhibition of Russian military vehicles and tanks on the main square, and it's a joke. So Russians wanted their tanks to be in center of Kiev, and they have, but there is again, like there is a, you know, aspect in it. So kids exploring those tanks and having fun. And I revisited some places like this Irpin Bridge. It's you've seen even on those presentations how it looked like when it was a siege of Kiev. So now it's still in ruins, and it's gonna be last picture of my presentation. And it's Day of Kiev, May 31 or May 30. It's a beautiful city coming back to life. Orchestra's playing, and I guess life is going on. So now I'm on the road to Donbass, and obviously gonna cover the war which is ongoing with a huge scale. And I feel that situation coming back to what we had in 8 years, that in Kiev, 600 kilometers from this place, you have like normal life. I mean, obviously now you have rocket strikes and air raid sirens, and on Donbass, or now it's also south and Kharkiv, you have those battles, and there's a country living simultaneously in those two realities. But I hope it's not for long, and I'm really thankful to Ukraine military that in Kiev we can enjoy orchestra playing and not having those bad things we saw in the occupied and liberated territories. That's it with me. So I'll be yeah.
No, this is the perfect slide to end with. But give us a sense of the energy that you can feel, or can you feel it, to rebuild? Like, do you get? I mean, the way the Ukrainians all fighting. Everyone's involved. Everyone's doing something. Do you get the sense that, God willing, this ends as quickly as it can, that same energy, and because I would assume all the allies, the Western allies, are going to be pouring money into this place just to, I mean, you get the sense that they're ready to use the same type of energy to build it back into this beauty that you show here.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I'm absolutely sure. And I can tell it, for example, from speaking with everyone and knowing sociology data from our refugees who left to Europe. Like, majority of them are willing to come back as soon as possible and start to rebuild. And it's unbelievable to see how, for example, Bucha changed. Like end of March, like the bodies of civilians, destroyed houses, smell of like death and desperate feeling. Like in a few weeks, Russian tanks. There was a street full of Russian tanks, and in like a few weeks, the street has new asphalt, and everything is clean. And I mean, also it's spring came, so it was a feeling of refreshment. I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen as soon as the war ends up. We're going to start like build we've never built before. But the problem is I have no idea how end-to-end the war is going to stop. So I'm not optimistic in it. But
and do you think this whole experience, you know, we've always heard of, you know, like in so many countries, corruption with government and this and that. This will sort of eradicate it because you'll all be coming back with a sense of purpose for the country.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I think there are gonna be many people, politicians, businessmen, regular people who wants to get things back to normal. And it's a good question you ask me, because I feel it's as a main fear actually for many of my bubble of like young progressive people, but also of like pro-Western part of Ukraine, proactive part of Ukrainians. We're afraid that we will have this chance after the war to modernize and change the country, but we're gonna fail and it's gonna be back to normal. And in this case, all this sacrifice and those losses gonna be will not have purpose, and that's the main fear. But
So
I guess,
how do you
yeah,
prevent that? How do you prevent that? Who could represent the young people that now it's new time. We need to be more honest and open and all of that.
I guess those who are actively involved in a war, and I mean obviously soldiers and volunteer soldiers, people who are mobilized, and out of them there are so many, again, businessmen and like elite, like professors and managers, and people who volunteer, who like dedicate all their time and efforts now to supply military or to help out people. Those who are active and sacrifice their time, efforts, and sometimes life for the comrades, gonna be those who will not let this country have same problems they used to have. We are, and I think I can say we, because I mean journalists are also a part of this movement. We are minority, but it's a proactive minority, and it's always that history. It's active minority make history, and passive majority give a path. So it's not going to be an easy journey, but I mean we're going to do it. But firstly, of course, we should win. So, but
is there a elder statesman or stateswoman or writer, somebody that is above all of this, that the whole country respects? When that person, he or she, speaks, everyone says, like, we have people could argue Henry Kissinger or whomever, like somebody that when they talk, we all stop and say, this woman is serious, this man is serious. Is there someone for you young people that can bridge your generation and the older generation to crystallize this moment into pushing you somewhere another way?
Yeah, so we're going general, and we're talking about like politics, and so I can't be as at the same level of expertise in photography. So it's only my own opinion again. But so I see that it's a 100% trust in military, all kinds of military. And for example, today, like this night, we had a soccer game with Ukraine and Scotland in Scotland, and Ukrainian fans were crying out ZSU, it's like Ukrainian military force. So it's like it's this scale of trust. But of course, it's in any country which it's in the war. So military guys and girls, and I see a few people from culture who are doing it well, like Serhii Korovayny, Kharkiv poet, which I really hope gonna get a Nobel Prize for literature this year. People talking about it, so might come back to this conversation later. I mean, our president Zelensky is a big symbol of resistance. But the thing with Ukrainians that we are not really trust politicians for a long time. And my feeling is when the war stopped, it's gonna be like messy in terms of politics, and it's what happened with the previous president, who was like a hero in 2015 when he built a military and made reforms, and now like half country hates him. So I don't think that someone from current politics gonna have this trust, but culture and military, I guess they're gonna be people from those fields who gonna lead us, who gonna have a voice to yeah, and also civil society. I mean, it's for me. I'm not sure about like the whole country, but people from civil society, people who are, I mean, doing all kinds of reforms in the peaceful times, but all of them are volunteering and helping military now, and those are also gonna be helping out this country to change rapidly.
Yeah, a question for you. The landmark buildings and churches, have most of them been destroyed, or some of them destroyed? You have any sense of that? Like St.
Landmark like churches?
Buildings, yeah, churches, St. Sophie's, Anya puts in there.
Not really. We are lucky enough that they didn't bomb Kiev and Lviv heavily, so it's not a problem. But I stopped sharing my screen, so let me find Kharkiv stuff really quick to give you a sense. And yeah, I actually have a few thoughts about it. So thanks for asking this question.
This is from your countrywoman, Anya.
Yeah, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, let's say. Okay. Let me share a screen. So it gives you a sense of Kharkiv Central. And it's something we can't really understand for now. I can't understand. This is rocket from 2015, so it's not recent, but the building behind it's recent. Russians just like ruining everything in Ukraine, including Russian-speaking areas, Russian-speaking cities. If they will be softer and smarter, for example, in Kharkiv, I believe that many of Kharkiv people gonna, support them in a way, or don't care on this politician games, they call it. But after these things, people in Kharkiv hate them. Like Mariupol, obviously it's a nightmare that what happened there and what's happening there now. But Mariupol is Russian-speaking city. Russian culture dominate, I would say, in a way, on this region. Used to dominate, and they just like killed thousands of civilians and ruined their whole houses, homes. To gain what? To gain land. That's what I can't understand truly what's their approach. So it's a different topic. So answering on your question about landmarks, it depends on the region. In eastern, southern regions, and also on the north, where there were heavy battles, everything is looks like this. Not everything, but many places. And our cultural heritage on West and Central Ukraine, it's more or less safe.
Good. Well, if anyone else has any questions, you put them in the chat room. But Serhii, this was it was wonderful. I think Bill said it best. It was nice to get a perspective of what's going on for the Ukrainian people. That's something we don't see, what's going on in the street. So you did good research to see what other people did. And so your presentation was totally unique in that way.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed those presentations. So it was very good research for me.
Yeah, that's yeah, no, that was terrific. So we thank you so much for staying up in the middle of the night for us. You know,
My pleasure.
when either I get to Ukraine or you get to the States, I owe you a cold beer. And I have a place for you to stay in New Jersey. In a
Good.
second.
Yeah, I miss state. I lived for a year in upstate New York. And gosh, I missed so much. But if you come to Ukraine, I owe you a beer because it's
Fair enough.
Ukrainian. So yeah, deal.
Yes, that's no, but that's wonderful. Anya, do you have anything to share with your countrymen? Can't hear.
I wasn't able to unmute myself again. You're being
Yeah.
power hungry. No, I was just going to say, дякую дуже і слава Україні.
Героям слава.
Be safe. I'm sure that was part of what she said. Be safe, and we thank you very, very much. And we'll see everybody on Friday night who can make it in, and we really appreciate it. And you know, John puts in a beautiful quote there. The portraits are telling us what's happening and the people. So you really did a terrific job to bring us to the street, and that's what we need daily.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to see Sasha Maslov presentation because he's a master of portrait, so he's gonna push this topic even further.
Yeah.
So,
but I have to say, you know, with each of you presenting the 10 or 15, whatever the number is, each one is equal. You know
that's
that
true.
you know it really is. You know, the men and women who put themselves in harm's way. You know, it doesn't matter who you are, and he would be the first to say that. He and all of you. So we thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
for
night.
me, and have a good
Go to
evening
sleep.
for you.
Be safe.
Bye.
Bye. So, everyone, thank you again for being in. Thanks, Jay, for making it all happen. Of course, everyone subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll see Serhii's conversation probably by Friday. I think it will be up. Jay will make that happen. And all the other presentations are already up. And we'll see you on Friday when we see Sasha Maslov, who is another terrific photographer. So we thank everyone.